everybody. My name's Wayne Lashley. Some of you may know me. I've been rattling around the database and natural world for decades. Done a whole variety of things. I've been a programmer, a manager of programmers, consultant, vendor, competitor to Software AG, and actually for the past 6 years, I've been a Software AG employee at last. So I'm an account executive these days. I work with both commercial and public sector customers all across North America. Okay. So this slide kind of is a thumbnail sketch of Software AG's history, which goes back a very long way. As many of you probably know, Software AG was founded back in 1969. We had our 50th anniversary year a couple of years back, and Adabas came along not too long after the founding. Natural came along in the late 70s, and they've both been obviously going strong since. Since 2008, there was the big acquisition of Web Methods, and things have continued since then. We've added new capabilities to become a leader in digital transformation, added and developed new solutions for process management, technology architecture, streaming analytics, cloud-based integration, API management, IoT, Internet of Things, and data integration. So, I won't go through all of these, but when you get the slide decks, you can kind of take a look at the highlights. And speaking of highlights, I can't say that I was back with Software AG or in the Adabas Natural community all the way back at the beginning, but I did have my start in 1984. So that was pretty early on. It was Adabas version 4 at that time, and Natural version had just gone to 1.2. So I don't know whether Gene Miklovich is on today, but that's a name probably a lot of you have known. He was the guy that trained me back in 1984, so I blame everything on him. Okay, so just to talk about a few facts and figures about Software AG, who we are today. This tagline, I think we adopted it about 3 years ago. We simplify the connected world by connecting people and technology for a smarter tomorrow. And we talk about digital backbone that enables that sort of connection between customers and the entities that they deal with. So I'll talk a bit more about that. As I said, this is a very quick overview. So founded in 1969, as I said before, we're in more than 70 countries, have more than 5,000 employees, and we enjoy relationships with more than 10,000 customers around the world. So another thing that we talk about a lot these days is turning data into value. Enterprises today are seeking to make productive collaboration between their customers, their employees, and their partners. And we say if you can make all those connections, you become a truly connected enterprise. And when you have a truly connected enterprise, technology connects more effectively, systems integrate seamlessly, processes run smoothly and effortlessly. And that's the way the data becomes value, and you can make smarter decisions faster. So we could spend a lot of time on this slide talking about what we refer to as the digital backbone, but this kind of represents the broad spectrum of capabilities that Software AG brings to the table these days, as we built on top of what began as just Adabas and Natural. Customers like you obviously still depend on Adabas and Natural for the fundamental systems of record that underlie each organization's digital transformation. We enable integration across your enterprise, capturing data from the physical world, sensors, robots, machines, through IoT. Analyze, correlate, expose that for new insights involving customers, partners, employees, and then adapting your architecture and your business processes to align business and IT. And so this is the way this digital backbone helps you turn data into value. At Software AG, we engage with customers at all stages of deployment of your solution. So we try to get you off on the right foot with guidance in your implementation and best practices for operations. We provide education, training, skills transfer. Many of you, I'm sure, interact with our global support organization. And then there's the communities where you can share experiences with other customers that are facing the same sort of challenges and be able to benefit from those shared experiences. I just saw a question come up that my slides are not being seen.
I see them, Wayne.
Okay. Dan, I'm not sure what the problem is, but
yeah, everybody else is saying they can see it.
All right. Okay, so as speaking more about professional services, I think these days professional services is more important than it's ever been in the past. We obviously recognize Adabas Natural customers. You're running critical applications. Patrick, I think you just took my screen.
Wayne, just share screen again, and it'll override that. Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to where we were. Yeah, you're running these critical applications, but you have constrained budgets. Everybody's worried about skills availability and that sort of thing. So that's why we have put more focus on our delivery of services and our range of offerings in terms of training and implementation, skills transfer, as I mentioned before, all the way through to managed services for the technology environment, or even for application development and application support. I mentioned earlier on, more than 10,000 customers worldwide these days, and here you see a full range of logos, not just Adabas Natural customers, but Software AG customers in general. You see AFMA and Eaton there. Brian, you're out there. I saw you before. So, there's a couple of prominent Adabas Natural customers from our community here in North America. And that brings me to the end. That's just a very quick overview of Software AG as we are today. If there are any particular questions that we can try to address at this point, I'm happy to do that, but I'll turn it back to you, Becky.
All right, thanks, Wayne. And again, if you have any questions throughout any of these sessions, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll keep an eye on that. So up next is Guido Falkenberg talking about the new product innovations for Adabas Natural.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to share with you new product innovations of Software AG's Adabas Natural business unit. My name is Guido Falkenberg, and I'm heading the global product management team of the business unit. I would like to start with market and technology trends that we consider as relevant for Adabas Natural. The cloud transformation is an ongoing process. We see more customers moving and developing applications for the cloud. And in process of this, adopting cloud-native technologies such as container, Kubernetes, DevOps, and APIs. But not everything will be moved to the cloud. Customers want to continue operating their sensitive data processing in their own data center, but at the same time leveraging best-of-breed cloud services to modernize their applications. Getting the best of both worlds. We call this hybrid modernization, with APIs and data integration pipelines bringing these two worlds together. Security and optimization are always on top of the CIO's agenda. Saving IT operation costs, especially on the mainframe, and a strict security are imperatives to be considered all the time. These technology trends and our customer challenges are reflected in our Adabas Natural 2050+ strategy. We continuously reviewing the strategy and deliver product innovation to meet these requirements. From optimized IT operations to modern development environments and integration technologies that empowers innovation of a digital backbone. Software AG's recent acquisition of the data integration specialist TreeSets adds further innovation to Adabas Natural. You will get more information about all these different innovation areas in this presentation later on. So let us start looking where to run your Adabas Natural applications. You can continue use your on-premises data center running Adabas Natural on ZOS or Linux. Or move some of your applications to the cloud, establishing a hybrid infrastructure landscape. Or completely move your application to the cloud, running Adabas Natural on Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud platforms. All of these different deployment options have different capabilities around virtualization or container technologies that can be leveraged in addition. So let's take a deeper look into product innovation on IBM's ZOS mainframe platform. We will release a new product to extend our zip enabling capabilities to Natural for DB2, helping you to save additional mainframe costs when running Natural with DB2 on ZOS. With Adabas encryption for ZOS, you can secure sensitive data against internal or external malicious attacks, leveraging and complementing IBM's pervasive encryption technologies. And in order to meet the increase of audits you are facing, we have launched the Adabas Auditing for ZOS product to meet your audit requirements for multiple stakeholders faster with less manual effort. The completely new mainframe optimization product that we are going to release in October this year is JOPAS. JOPAS' main focus is to help you saving mainframe costs by compiling and running IBM Enterprise COBOL ZOS applications on IBM's Java virtual machine and zip processor, following a non-invasive approach where no risky code changes or data migration is needed, and continue benefiting from the secure and reliable mainframe infrastructure. You don't have to leave your mainframe by saving and optimizing operations. As we are currently in a restricted release, please get in direct contact with us to learn more about it. Now let's take a look what product innovations are available for Linux and the cloud. Based on our current capability to run Adabas Natural in distributed and virtual Linux environments, we have further extended our high availability capabilities with Adabas Cluster for Linux, a modern multi-node cluster technology for Adabas Linux. Moving into the future, we will also further increase the level of high availability for Natural Linux, to be communicated soon. Protecting your sensitive data stored in Adabas can be achieved with Adabas Encryption Linux, which we further enhance to cover additional datasets and cloud key management systems. All supported by our modern web-based administration tool, the Adabas Manager, making it easy to manage distributed Adabas in anti-network environments. Your Adabas database holds valuable business data. At the same time, your data management and analytics landscape in your organization is constantly changing and evolving. Data lakes, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud analytics are just a few examples. With the Adabas SQL Gateway, Connex, and the Adabas Event Replicator, we offered you in the past strong connectivity towards other databases, data warehouses, and business intelligence systems. But we have limitations by integrating with cloud analytics, data lakes, streaming middleware, and NoSQL databases. These gaps are being closed now. With the acquisition of StreamSets, we are able to connect and share Adabas data with nearly any modern data platform. Here are a few examples of new data platforms StreamSets can connect to in order to leverage your Adabas business data in new platforms. Let me summarize. You can be confident that your Adabas and Natural core applications are future ready. By optimizing mainframe operations and security, while achieving significant cost savings with SIP enablement. By exploiting cloud services for hybrid modernization, or by completely moving your Adabas and Natural applications into a cloud-native architecture. And by accelerating business innovation, leveraging APIs and data pipelines. And please remember, you need to take a proactive approach addressing your skill shortage risks, making use of our product training and modern tools. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for upcoming innovations. Thank you.
Thanks, Guido. Appreciate it very much. So now it's actually my turn to talk to you briefly about health checks. So I'm going to share my screen. So we've been doing health checks for decades now. And what a health check is, for those of you who haven't had one, first of all, it doesn't cost you anything. We can now, now that, post-pandemic, we can still do them remote, or we can come on site and do them. They run from a half a day to a day. But what the health check is it allows us to come out and take a look at your software AG environment and how it fits into the bigger picture. And we look at things like performance, modernization, integration, possibly rehosting from the mainframe to Linux, the cloud, whatever you want. We could talk about product upgrades. Actually, you guys can help us set the agenda for this health check. And you can, if you want a health check, all you have to do is reach out to me, your SE, or anyone else from software. See here. So the software AG participants would include usually myself, Patrick, your account executive, whether that's Mark Colburn, Wayne Lashley, Mary LaLoche, whoever it may be. It'll also include system engineers. That's where myself and Eric and Patrick and everyone else comes in. Sometimes professional services or even support will join us on some of these. But from your side, what we would like are basically any or all of the ones I have listed on this slide. So it could be CIOs, CTOs, vice presidents, and directors, but for sure we need the technical staff. We always need to talk to the DBAs, the programmers, possibly the IT architects, and any business analysts that you have. We've also, depending upon who we're working with, it could be a financial user or a business user, because sometimes with the business users, they can show us things that maybe they haven't told you guys that they do or don't like about a particular application. So just kind of give you an idea of a sample health check. We get kicked off and we just talk about what are the objectives of the day. Then we start looking at the technical side, like what operating system are you running on? Are you running on the mainframe? Are you running on Linux? Do you have any issues around CPU utilization, using too much? We'll collect some SMF data. We'll look at your products and we'll make sure you're on supported versions. And if you're not, what's an upgrade path, that type of thing. And then we will also ask you to send us a lot of information, like for the Adabas side of the world, ADA reps, shutdown stats. And for the natural side, we'll ask for, like the number of applications, what are the major applications, how many libraries are there, how many objects or modules there are. We'll get, like a buffer pool statistics screenshot. Patrick will have you run some NOx stats, which gives us some additional information. We talk about integration and modernization and APIs and all kinds of stuff. But like I said, we've done hundreds of these things over the years. So some of our customers have us do these on a regular basis, like every year, every 2 years. You can request it whenever you want. Again, it's no cost. Basically, consider it part of your ongoing maintenance. And some of the things, I've already mentioned a lot of this, but things that we talk about are licensed products. What products do you have? What are the support dates for those? When they're going to drop? When do you need to do an upgrade? Are they used? If they're not used, why not? And then we're going to also look at features that are embedded within Adabas and Natural that you may not be taking advantage of. We're going to look at, do you integrate Adabas to other systems? Like Snowflake, Salesforce, whatever it is. Lots of things that we can integrate to. Pain points that you have. Could be people, you need some more resources. We could have you talk to professional services. We definitely concentrate a lot on performance because, performance is always key. And then we'll talk to you about your strategic directions and plans, your disaster recovery, and your cloud environment or your cloud projects. And then after the health check, which again lasts half a day to a day, we will create a detailed report that's usually somewhere in the 20 to 30 to 40 pages long, and we will deliver that within a few weeks. So with that, I'm finished. And again, health checks, if you want one, reach out to anybody at Software AG and we can get one scheduled for you. We just need a couple of weeks lead time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Latham from Snowflake, and you guys can hear about Snowflake. And I'd be willing to bet you remember that old term, dollars to donuts? I'd be willing to bet that there is a Snowflake initiative within your organization somewhere. And Adabas and any other of the so-called legacy applications can work in the Snowflake world. So between Robert and Eric Wood from Software AG, they're going to talk to you about how you could benefit from sharing that data on the mainframe or other legacy platforms with Snowflake.
Well, Becky, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. Hopefully everybody can see my slides. My name is again Robert Latham. I am the manager of our state and local government team for Snowflake. So again, great honor to be asked to join with you and talk about how Snowflake can work with Software AG and the product sets they offer. But more, I think, broadly than that is how can we integrate with legacy systems, on-prem systems, and the like, and really be able to make some headway and value out of all of that siloed data. So let me kind of start with, what is Snowflake? So at a very high level, it's a 3-tiered architecture. We are provided as a service exclusively in the 3 major cloud platforms. So we reside in AWS, Azure, and Google. Unfortunately, we do not have a deployment that is on-site or in your cloud tenant. We are only available in again, our tenants in many different regions across those three cloud platforms. There's again, let me go in a little more detail on how we're architect, because Snowflake is very unique. We are over 10 years old now. No, not near as old as Software AG, but we're gaining on it. And we were built exclusively for the cloud. We were designed to take advantage of the elastic capabilities and the unique structure of cloud platforms. So let's dive into each of these in a little more detail and talking specifically about the storage layer. So we utilize the cloud providers' S3 or blob storage. We manage that storage for you to make it easy to utilize. So you don't have to allocate storage. You don't have to really think anything more about it than really what kind of data do I want to load into it. And you can load virtually any type of data, whether that's structured data, semi-structured, or even unstructured data. We then highly compress and encrypt that data to reduce size and cost, because Snowflake is a consumption-based model. So you pay for just the storage that you use and just the compute that you use, and nothing more. So we really do a lot of things to help optimize and control costs and the size of those things. The second tier utilizes the compute. So we would utilize the cloud platform's standard EC2 compute nodes and modules, but we wrap it in a very sophisticated management envelope so that it becomes fully controlled by this layer, and you can separate the storage from compute. So we don't run into the traditional problems and bottlenecks of legacy systems where one function is impacting another function and so on and so forth, because we can separate each workload from one another and then configure that workload very simply to work best for the type of work it's doing. So for example, if this is business intelligence and reporting, we're going to scale those compute nodes in such a way so that it can elastically expand out and be able to handle the concurrent workload and requests that's being made of it. And then when those requests diminish, we turn those services off to the point where nothing is running. And again, you only pay for what you use. But we can also isolate each of those so you can do loading and reporting and analysis all at the same time, all on live data without one impacting the other. And this is all made possible because of our intelligent infrastructure layer, which manages all of those services and resources for you. It does the optimization and tuning. It does metadata management and also provides a very robust, very secure governance model. We integrate with virtually every type of enterprise security backbone and system, so you can do single sign-on and multi-factor and all of those great things. This infrastructure manages it all for you. And then what that enables and really powers is your ability to produce many different workloads in one single platform. Since we can accept virtually any type of data, we can store that as a foundational component there at the bottom as a data lake, so you can keep it in its more native format. We can store it in a more traditional data warehouse type of repository that is more structured and governed and transformed, if you will. And something new that we'll be adding later this year that I don't think any platform includes all of is something we call Unistore, which will now also include transactional information. So we can include not only the transactional, but also the analytical types of environments to power the data engineering and the data pipelines. This is where stream sets comes into play, being able to connect to all of those different types of data, those legacy systems, those data silos, and be able to do things like change data capture and transformations and the like, and be able to push and pull that information from that source to Snowflake very, very seamlessly. Eric will be talking about that specifically in the next presentation. But we can then do other things like data science and machine learning, or application and application development, all on the same platform where the compute and where the data all reside together. All of this is for naught if we didn't have a very robust and very secure governance model. So we really do provide a host of different features and functionality to let you really understand what your data is. Do you have PII? What type of objects are they? So that you can classify each of those objects and be able to apply not only security policies, but a variety of other role and access policies to control the access of that information. Be able to provide row and column level control, tokenization. We can do conditional masking and dynamic masking of data, so you're not, you can hide things like social security numbers and the like. So really then powers the rest of your ecosystem to be able to do your analysis and reporting upon that. One of the other things that makes Snowflake quite unique, again, since we are multi-cloud, we do not lock you into one vendor, one platform, one product. We reside across all 3 cloud platforms. You can actually have accounts in more than one region and in more than one platform. It all costs the same. But I can then also set this up to do disaster recovery and failover. Should there be some type of an outage in the region that you're deployed in, I could set a failover command and actually switch not only to another region, but I could even switch to another cloud provider completely, should it be a significant outage. That also adds to your disaster recovery and replication components. One of the other things that makes us very unique is our ability to do data sharing and collaboration. No longer are the days where you have to do things like secured FTPs and sneaker nets and a whole variety of other things that we've had to done over the years to share data, just to have it not be in our control and be stale. We can do something we call a direct share, which would allow you to share very granular level and very in a controlled method data on your platform to another agency or to another company or provider or vendor, whatever the case may be, in again a very secured manner, but it's live data. You maintain control of that information. You can actually see if that user that you're sharing data with is accessing what they're accessing, and should you need to ever remove access, it's a click of a button. You can also then provide this information into more of a private data exchange there in the middle, where you could create your own private data catalog to share information, the metadata and content behind it, and make it very easy to again share with authorized agencies, entities, partners, what have you, and again, provide that access of the data. We then also provide a public marketplace with over 390 data providers. Today, as of, I guess, January rather, we had 1,800 live data sources. Many of these are public data, free data that you can request and have immediately available in your account to do things like enrichment and analysis with your data. There are also paid for sources, financial information, other government sources that really just makes the utilization of third-party data super, super easy and super transparent. The other main feature that we added in the last year or so, and the most requested, was to provide a platform to do really development for data engineers and data scientists within the language of your choice, whether that's Scala, Python, or Java. But with Snowpark, you're now able to deploy that code base within the Snowflake environment and tenant, so that you can utilize and have it adjacent not only to the data that resides there, but also have access to the very elastic and dynamic compute resources. And those products can take advantage of those features as well. And then to kind of go hand in hand with that, we recently acquired another product, Streamlit, last year that helps you to be able to build those interfaces and build applications right within the platform, again, to provide that application layer adjacent to the data and compute all in one place. So in summary, what I'd kind of like to leave you with is, you know, Snowflake is that one data hub, that data cloud, that is a place you can bring all of your silos together in one form, whether that's a warehouse or a lake, to be able to power all of your different workloads and functions in one place without having to make many copies of data, move data, etc. What our customers say about this and love about the product is it significantly increases their time to value. Implementation schedules are much, much shorter with this type of a service. The near zero administration just makes it easy to use, easy to scale and understand and use the product. The ease of the elasticity is second to none. You only pay for what you use. You have a busy month or a busy activity, it scales up, it runs, it turns off. And lastly, what we often hear is it just works. So appreciate the time, really do. Thank you for everybody giving me the opportunity to speak with you. And I'll turn it over to Eric.
All right. Hey, let's see if I can get it up there. So, do you all see my screen?
Go for it, Eric.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, thank you, Robert, for that introduction. And Guido, I thank you for your presentation talking about Adabas and how we can now move things more to the cloud. That should get us all excited because Adabas is just not your plain old Adabas anymore. So that stayed on the mainframe and so forth. Now we can just use that data because it's a powerful data, and we know that, and it's very valuable to all of us and now all of our organizations. Now we have the ability to use newer technology and have that data in Adabas move to those newer technologies. So in this presentation, we're going to focus on data integration. And within the data integration, we're going to be specifying the mainframe, talking about our tools that help you extract the data from the mainframe, view the data, and then move it to your cloud databases. So this brings me to a survey that a recent survey that was done by the IBM Institute for Business Value. And in this survey, as we all know, the mainframe is still unmatched in terms of transactional performance, as well as reliability and scale and security and scalability. But 71% still say, executives, that their mainframe applications are their central base to their organization. They will continue to use the mainframe to run their core business. But what's coming on the rise now is cloud adoption. Within the last 7 years, the cloud adoption and organizations have been moving data to the cloud. 60% of these organizations are starting to move this data to the cloud. And this should get us really excited, especially from the presentation from Robert, knowing that security is there. I think this is putting a lot of the mainframe administrators a little bit at ease, knowing that security is really a main focus on these cloud environments, and they are starting to move and thinking about moving their data more to the cloud versus being on-prem. So for the strategic important information about your data, what's happening is this. we want to start moving the data to the cloud because we want to start sharing this data and liberating the data from the mainframe. Why we want to do this? Well, for one thing, we want to start using tools that are out there that will allow me to do early fraud detection, as well as optimizing my business. So now things can move, be a lot more better in performance as well as efficiency. I can reduce costs by taking some of these processes off main. And another thing is to satisfy your customers and your constituents, your citizens within your state, your city, by letting them have a more user-friendly, holistic, I love that word, holistic view of their data, so that they can start looking at the data themselves, doing updates without having to go and stand in line at the DMV or go get a marriage license, so forth. Now this stuff is all in one place on a portal that that can be pulled, data can be pulled from multiple data sources so that they can have a better view of this. And as well as for the decision makers, they can start looking at a more financial approach of how they can operate their business. But the challenge still is there. It's still hard to get this data from the mainframe. Now, a lot of you all here have started using some of these SaaS applications. You got your Salesforce, you have, your Workday and so forth. And I call that data that's on the surface, right? That data is easy to get access to. And so these SaaS applications already have connectors and adapters that right now fit into Snowflake. So that's really easy for these data analysts to move this data over to the cloud to do analytical work on this data. So that kind of sets us up on the mainframe because that's so easy. Everyone else thinks that the operational application should be just as easy, but they just don't know. You see that firewall over there? Getting across that firewall causes a lot more problems than they want to realize. So what they're doing is they're tasking these data engineers, right? The task of trying to get access to this data stored in different data sources like your Oracles and so forth, and the Kafkas and the Hadoops, trying to move that data there. But they have to understand that each one of these data sources have different APIs. Some of them may be on different message queues and just their own a proprietary way of getting to the data, as well as this data has been stored for decades. They got to figure out how this data can be accessed from these environments. And then the bigger wall, where the mainframe is. This is the one that's kind of the hardest one to get to. And I know you guys there, knowing this, are shaking your heads. I see you shaking your head, although we are virtual. So let's take a look at the challenges that's with the mainframe. Of course, our data and our core data is stored in database. I'm gonna say database. And then you got a little vSAM sprinkled here, a little DB2 sprinkled there, and a little IMDb sprinkled there. But your database data is there, and it's where all of your valuable information resides. And as we know, applications are they're all pretty much custom built for those departments and for the organizations, the different agencies and so forth. And those applications also help shape the data that is stored in these repositories. And then some of the other challenges are the present.
Eric, you muted yourself somehow. Eric, you're on mute. Eric, you're on mute.
This thing is going on mute on its own.
You're just too excited.
I am
just
so
too
excited about it. And passionate about this thing. So what did you miss? Okay, so
we got most of this. We got most of this slide.
Okay, so and then the other main thing is that the data on the mainframe is stored in Epsidic, and when we know that moving to the open systems platform, it has to be translated into ASCII. So, what are some of the approaches that are being taken? Well, we all fit into one of these three categories. The first one is do nothing, right? We said, you know what? You want the data, you figure out how to get it, or really, I'm too busy. And I know you hear that this is something that happens all the time. I'm really busy. I got enough on my plate. You're asking me for these requests to get this data down to you, but I really don't have the cycles to do it, nor do I have the manpower, the resources to continue meeting these requests. So you know what? You just won't have the data. And then the other two, custom code and point-to-point integration, they both share some of the same challenges, whereas they require an additional governance and security, because moving data over from the mainframe, you being the administrator of that data, you're saying, well, you're moving this data over. Who's looking at the data? There's some very important data. There's some personal information. There's some financial data, some health personal data that's there. Who's seeing this data? And it could, you're going to need additional security and governance and management. And most of all, it's not scalable. And sometimes these point-to-point integrations are expensive and could cause problems with the mainframe itself. So quickly talking about our acquisition of stream sets. Guido kind of mentioned that in his presentation, that with the acquisition of stream sets, Software AG now has a complete iPaaS portfolio. Whereas, as you all know, that we've already done application integration with an API management with web methods. We have integration with IoT devices with Cumulocity IoT. We have process integration with errors. And now we have data integration using stream sets. So let's talk more about that. So, Software AG, and there 3 clicks to the web. So now we have 3 steps to the cloud. All right. So here we have, I'm going to talk about each one of these. So these 3 steps, the first step you want to do is identify the source data, where this data resides, and what data are you looking for. The next one is building the data dictionary, so that this data dictionary will have all the information about those data sources. And the third step is building the pipeline that's going to actually move the data to Snowflake and to the cloud environment. So let's look at these 3 steps. All right, so in the first step is we call it step 1, securing the data sources. So again, at the bottom, you know that with, and Guido mentioned it, that with our Connects environment, we have over 150 plus data connectors, but we're going to focus on the mainframe, because the mainframe is the hardest one to get to the cloud, and that's what StreamSet is allowing our customers to do today. So we're looking at the connecting to the databases using the mainframe data collector. And that mainframe data collector will connect to those data sources, such as the DB2, IMS, as well as to all the various files that you have in the mainframe. And then what it's going to do, it's going to do all of the heavy lifting for you. It's going to do the translation from EBCDIC to ASCII, any other type of translation of the data to the data dictionary, as well as going to respect and extend the security that you already have in place on the mainframe. Your RACF, your ACF2, that data will still be remain and will be governed within the data dictionary, as well as on top of that, we add some additional security so that for the ones that are using this data dictionary, we can still restrict their uses. They can only have read-only access. They can only see certain fields and certain contents of the field. So we have several different levels within the security of that data dictionary for those users of that information. The second step is we'll allow you to view that data. So this is now going to be given over to the data scientists and the analysts, and they're going to be able to look at the data and query the data to see if this is the data that they want. Are these the correct data sets? Let them pick out the data sets that they're looking for. And then this also allows them to do data virtualization, where I can look at the data from different sources. I can look at data from vSim and Adabas and a SQL database. And if this the information that I want, where the data has been stored within the organization, then you will tell the engineers, the data engineer, this is what I want. And guess what that does? That eliminates the process of them keep coming back to the mainframe organizations. Can you write me this query? This is not quite what I want, because this is what normally happens. You write these ad hoc queries, you throw this data over the wall, and they look at it and says, this is not quite what I'm looking for. So with this mechanism and with this approach, we can now continue to look at the data or in real time and do data virtualization. And then when we're satisfied with the data, then the next step is to tell the data engineers, and they will build the pipeline. So with the pipeline, this is where you will build the different connections, and within stream sets, we have 70 plus pre-processed predefined data processors. Now, these data processors, what they are already built and will do for you is they'll do things like do some data masking of the data before we move it over to Snowflake. Although Snowflake can handle that as well, we want to get it as ready for analytics as possible before we move it over to Snowflake. So we make sure this is how we want to see the data. It does. It can do transformation of the data. It can combine fields. It has a lot of different functions that is already pre-built that you don't have to code for. And you can use as many of these processes as you would like within your pipeline. So, and then once you build a pipeline, you see something above the line that says the control hub. You can build there, operate it, and then you can monitor the flow of the data. So you can see what's being processed, what's being moved, and it will handle all of the change data capture, streaming of the data. This is all done within the control hub, and you can watch this data. So the data plane is where your data resides, and you can look at the data in a secure platform, and the control hub allows you to operate and monitor the data as it's processing, being ingested into the Snowflake and the cloud. So this is a
Eric, 1
yes.
minute, please.
Okay. I got 2 slides. Okay. So this is a view of a pipeline, and you can look at this and see that it's very visual. It's wizard driven. It's very detailed, and you can see each one of these are various processors. And in this flow, you see from the beginning that it's coming from the mainframe and it's going over to Snowflake. So you can look at this process, and then in your control hub, you can watch the data as it's moving through. One other thing we have in stream sets is what's inevitable in IT? Change, right? So within this pipeline, something may change. So if the schema changes, if the platform changes, the format changes, we have already automatically built in something that will handle data drift. So it will automatically pick up those changes and will not allow the flow of the data going to the cloud to be interrupted. You will have continuous flow of data. I'm getting to the last slide, Becky. So to sum this up with our data integration, we have the broader sets of database coverage with the adapters that we have. It's an easy single design. And one thing I want to mention is that if you build a piece of the pipeline, just like you do in your programs, it's shareable, it's reusable. So if someone has already built a function, use that function, don't build it again. All right, and then it's adaptable. So with that said, if you have any other questions and you're ready to liberate your data from the cloud, please contact Software AG or go to this website, talk to us, your systems engineer, and your account representative for further information. And with that said, I bid you adieu and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Eric. And there were a couple questions out here. One was from Mohammed. Hi, Mohammed. Are there Adabas Natural customers who have deployed production environments in Snowflake? The answer is yes, we have customers in a public forum like this. We can't discuss specifics. So if you want to talk specifics about how we've deployed Adabas or legacy data from the mainframe into the cloud, we can talk offline, just contact your local Software AG representative, and Mohammed, of course, Mary, so just contact Mary. And then Mohammed asked another question. We supply Adabas on the mainframe to the SQL Server periodically to provide easy access to the to the mainframe data. What advantage can we achieve by moving database on the mainframe to Snowflake? That's definitely a little bit more detailed conversation. So Mohammed, I'd like to take that offline because there's pros and cons, and we would need to know specifically. But because you guys are using event replicator, database event replicator to move to SQL Server, we could discuss which is better in which situation. But if you're going to go to Snowflake, the stuff that Eric just described is really slick, and it does give you the capability with that stream sets, because you have that extra piece there. It gives you the capability to do a lot more with the data instead of just a raw data dump into SQL Server. Okay. And then Brian asked a question: does stream sets event replicator support Kafka as a target?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the questions. And with that, up next is Patrick Gould, Team Eclipse or Team Green Screen. He's going to talk about Natural One or the Natural Green Screen editor, which is being replaced by Natural One. Go ahead, Patrick. Patrick, you're on mute.
Patrick, you're on mute. Thanks for the introduction, Becky. So Becky's my boss, as you know, and I think she's punishing me because I've noticed that I have 3 presentations today. So I must be in her bad books. Anyway, the topic I'm going to speak about right now is Team Eclipse or Team Green Screen. Which one are you? So me, I'm Team Eclipse. And if I relate this to Formula One, I'd say Team Eclipse is your Red Bulls, and then Team Green Screen are your Ferraris, your Mercedes, etc. So I'm going to tell you what is happening with Natural on the mainframe and on open systems. Let me just get my cursor in the right place. So we do have an agenda. I'm going to do an overview of this topic. I'm then going to show you again the benefits of using Natural One, why in the end it is a better fit for you, the roadmaps that indicate that we are close to the end of the green screen editor as we know it, what this means to you, other options you have for the green screen editor, some useful links, and then of course some next steps. So we go back all the way back to 2018 when Software AG first announced the Natural 9 roadmap. Of course, we were many versions back at that stage, but today we are sitting with 8.2.8 being the only supported version of Natural on the mainframe. And the drop date for that support is 12/31/2023. So that's around about just over 8 months we have left for the supported 8.2.8 version. A lot of customers have already moved to 9.2. Some are in the process of moving across to 9. So today's presentation is very relevant to that topic. On the Linux side, or if you're a Unix side, Natural already does not support the green screen, and it hasn't done so for a while already. The learning curve, of course, comes that Natural One is an Eclipse-based editor. So anyone who is familiar with Eclipse GUI, IDE, the learning of Natural is very simple. It's just basically another plugin inside of Eclipse, and you utilize it and have all the fancy windows open and all the views and perspectives that you expect. We have found, and it seems more and more these days with audits being thrown out at everybody, that it is very beneficial to be on supported versions of Natural, and it is often an absolute requirement to be on supported versions of Natural. And that's due to the software audits that are around these days. So a quick little introduction to Natural One. This is a blurb from a PowerPoint. Natural One, as I said, is Eclipse-based, and it allows you to maintain your natural objects. It allows you to expose those natural subprograms as REST APIs. You can even create rich internet applications using Natural for Ajax. Natural One comes with a free developers kit for Natural for Ajax, allows you to build some super powerful GUI applications. And if you really fall in love with the product, then you would purchase that for a production environment. So basically from one environment, you can see all your mainframe tools. You've got ISPF tools, you've got predict tools that are available to you within the editor. So these are just some of the capabilities and why Natural One is probably exciting to anybody coming out of college. Anybody who is 30 years younger than me would really like the features that, and have probably only ever worked with these kind of features, being editors of new. So there are object-based templates for new natural objects, similar to natural construct.g, not exactly the same, but you could build that yourself if you wanted to with objects that are code templates for you in your environment. We have code template based on code assist. So code assist is being able to insert a period and it'll pop up certain object for you, or help with a move with a dot. You can get whatever the syntax correct. So we have code templates, which are of course, very real in all other GUI IDEs. Simple way to toggle source lines into comment lines and vice versa. Context sensitive help. Object dependency view. So already you can see when you're in one program, you can basically see who I call on the right hand side in the dependencies view, and you can go even further as to who calls me. Quick little way to be able to do that. Outline view, that gives you a high level overview of your program and allows you to go to a particular point in the program just from a nice little user-based outline view on the right of your screen. It supports full natural syntax, mainframe, Linux, Unix, Windows. Reliable instant parsing, so it parses as you start typing, and you can see errors straight away as you're typing through it. If you see a particular error message, you will see a little indicator on the right-hand side with a little red arrow telling you have an error. You can just hover over that and it will tell you what the actual error message is. You can do automatic folding of source code, makes your program sometimes easier to read while you're editing. Automatic upper to lowercase translation in your preferences. And then you can also do code context first focused code completion. So these are just a few of the good things with Natural One. There are many more, and you will get to learn it more and more as you use it. So we say upgrade today. Getting close now. You better start upgrading soon because we've only got 8 months left. I'm going to explain a few options to you that you do have available still. But really, when you order Natural 9, you get the Natural One, you get the NDV server all as one. You share the same license key. Once you get an NDV installed, you basically can get going with Natural One. So you want to get this onto your calendars as quick as possible and get to the supported version of Natural moving forward. Good, yeah. So here's the actual roadmap. You can see that we lost 8.2.7 support at the we lost it at the end of 2022. That required you to be at 8.2.8 if you wanted to be at support, or at a 9 level. So you can see the different dates to the side. You can see that the latest release is 9.2, which came out in 2022 in October, and it's already the 4th release of Natural 9. I'll be covering some of the highlights of Natural 9.1 and 9.2 later on today, and you'll be surprised to see all the new features that have been added, and as well as how Natural versions work. So what does this mean to you?
Patrick, let me interrupt for a second. Just 2 minutes, please.
Oh, sure. Okay. So support requests. Of course, all your support requests will still be handled. Any fixes that are available will always be available to you. The only time you would run into potential issues is if it's a brand new error and you're not at the latest version, you would be required to upgrade to that. So it's a single UI for all development. It's easy to learn in my impression. Some people struggle, but I think it's easy. It's very intuitive. You just got to get going and practice with it. In the end, you will see at faster development time, and it is also already DevOps integrated. So if you're trying to get your natural code into a DevOps environment as well, it is available for that too. Of course, some useful links. I believe these are going to be shared with you. So there's some free training, which Nicole's going to go over as well as how to get to all of that. There's a natural one, frequently asked questions, and then there's a link to the natural DevOps. And I believe that is not the end. So I did tell you there would be an alternative, right? So if you insist on current coverage, and a couple of our customers are, we do offer natural ISPF license, but it is only available on ZOS. There is a cost associated with it, but basically when you install natural ISPF, the green screen editor is re-enabled. You would also have the option of extended maintenance, but that is always on a it's never guaranteed. You have to ask for it, and probably all you would get is probably a 1-year contract. So with that all in mind, please reach out to us if you have any more questions. And I'm sure you know, I'm just patrick.gould at softwareaggov.com. And you can get hold of any of us for further information, and we'll lead you down the correct path. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And just a couple things. One is there should be a recording out there somewhere from a year or two, probably a couple years ago. Kathy Jackson, hi Kathy, did a webinar on Natural One and how they implemented it, and it was fantastic. So that's available. If you can't find it, maybe contact Patrick or myself, and we can locate it and get that out to you guys. So our next presenter is Nicole Ritchie, and she's going to be talking about how to navigate the Software AG website to find all the online free training and developer resources that are available to you. So Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, everyone. So hopefully, as Guido had suggested at the end of his presentation, you guys are also working on sort of your succession planning and training and bringing on new talent. So I'm going to just sort of navigate through a couple of options so that you can send folks on the way to go grab some of that training with little effort. There's really a lot of questions that I suspect you sometimes hear, and I'm hearing sometimes from our SE team, like, where do I find those latest product roadmaps? How do I find the self-paced training? Where can I get documentation and download that? And you might also be wondering, how do you get a training class set up and tailored specifically for your team? Where do you submit product improvement ideas besides calling up Patrick and telling him what to make changes for? I'm going to show you where these resources should be readily available for you. So there's really 3 key areas. Some are new and some are old. The tech community, I think most everyone here should be very familiar with. That's traditionally, can you mute? Someone needs to mute, please. You go to the tech community where you traditionally had your forums and your knowledge base. Training and certifications have moved to a new platform called Learn, softwareag.com. And then there's the Developer Center that is very focused and targeted for the developers. And this is open to anyone, not just Software AG customers. So I'd like to start this tour from softwareag.com to give you a sense of where you can find all this information. Let's start with. Let's start at softwareag.com. Head to resources. Now, where would we find training? Let's head over to services. Believe it or not, that's where it's hidden. Not only can you find training here, you can get access to our support system, Empower, as you guys are well familiar with, and find out what professional services has going on. So let's go check out what's under the training world. There's a lot of options Software AG offers from training, not just the free self-paced training and certifications, so you can get badges to certify your knowledge, but there's also opportunities to develop tailored training plans and having professionals come in person to give your team the training that they need. There's also different levels of training. We call them sometimes from the associate or getting started, all the way up to professional, which dives deeper into it, to expert levels. Within those, why don't we take a look at the learning paths? This is a great way for you to go find out what's available. So launching from here, we're now being taken to the master catalog at Software AG, learn.softwareag.com. This is open to anyone. You don't have to log in to view all of this. Here we could select our Adabas Natural subject, find out there's about 80 items of training showing up here. That looks like a lot. How do I find out what I'm looking for? I wonder if there's anything going on about natural and the web. You can see courses here. I don't really like this layout because we can't really see what the courses look like. So let me change the way that course layout is done. I can see this a little bit better. Maybe I just want to see what's the latest thing, what's the newest thing someone's published. I can see EntireX Natural Integration has just gone live here, in addition to natural and web integration. You can select your classes here, get a brief description of what that class is about, what the content's going to be covered. And in some cases, it'll even tell us how long or how many hours it'll take to cover this. In this particular case, this is a 4-day course. And you can also sort by self-paced and instructor-led. Let's take a look and find out which ones are just self-paced. In this particular case, I'm going to clear our search, and also by course type and also the badges. So this is a great tool for you to take a look, surf around, see what type of information is available. This isn't the only spot you have to look. You can also leave from the Learn portal to check out the Developer Center and the tech community, where you can also find additional information. So I'm going to head back over here to softwareag.com, thinking this is a good foundational start point, and take a look at our Developer Center. So the Developer Center, as I mentioned, has really been set up and made to be targeted strictly to anyone who wants to learn and develop. And we're promoting this with hopes of drawing even more talent in, people who may not even know about the products that Software AG offers, but how they can quickly get up to speed and learn how to use it. So here in the Developer Center, you can take an opportunity to take a look at any of our products, right? Let's take a look at what Natural has to offer here on the developer community. Not only do you have free downloads, but you also have brief description of what it is. You can get to the tutorials, which are also posted on the website. You can get access to documentation. You guys are probably familiar with this, what's new in Natural 9.2. You can also see training and videos. So here is some of the videos, is some of the tutorial playlists that you find out on YouTube, which is separate from the training that you might find on the learning portal. These are generally shorter snapshots that don't take much time, half hour, maybe an hour, to give you a brief preview. And then once again, we are now back down to the course trainings. And from here, this highlights some of the featured training on the topic of natural, takes you right back to the learning portal so that you can see the sites that I had just shown you previously. Okay. So in addition to other resources we talked about, you can find your roadmaps here. You can find different special resources and information. If you wanted to give some feedback about the product, we've got AHA integrated in here. So you can submit your ideas here through the AHA portal. And then you can also check out what the latest news is, upcoming events, frequent questions, and then forum discussions. Well, here, let's take a look at random numbers from 1 to 20. That looks pretty cool. I'm curious how to program that. That takes you over to the tech forums, which is on the tech community. So you can see you can bounce around from all 3 platforms, no matter where you are, if you just scroll down far enough and do a little clicking. So here on the tech community, they've developed a really personalized experience. If you're logged in, you can see the information in the knowledge base, product news, and more importantly, the place where you can communicate on the forums. So the bottom line is start softwareag.com, developers.softwareag.com, or learn.softwareag.com, or techcommunity.softwareag.com, and you're guaranteed to find anything you're looking for in any of those channels. And if you can't find it, post a question to the forum or contact us and we'll go look for it for you. So with that, thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Becky.
Thanks, Nicole. And Nicole knows that I am always talking to her, asking her, where do I find? So I asked her to do this session for you guys, because if I can't find it, I know you can't find it.
Hi, everybody, again. So today I have myself, who is a very small part of this presentation, and the major work was all done by Helen in support. She's our main go-to person when it comes to setting up the Ada Manager and getting it to work as designed. So I'm just going to go through a few slides and then I will let Helen talk for a little bit, and we're going to then do a demo of of the Adabas Manager. So get my cursor in the right spot. Okay, so it's a very short agenda. We're just going to do a quick Adabas Manager overview, an Adabas Manager roadmap. Then the demo is the main portion of this presentation. And then we can do Q&A either if there's time, or we'll just answer that in the chat or get back to you afterwards on any answers or to your questions. So overview. This is straight out the manual because it really does explain exactly what the Adabas Manager is. It provides a browser-based administration and the ability to monitor of Adabas databases on Linux Windows platforms. I don't know if you guys remember the old DBA Manager that came with Adabas. I did love that piece of software. This is the replacement for that software, and it just gets more and more functions at each release. With its latest release, you can now even administer certain stuff up on the mainframe. There's limited functionality, and I'll explain to you what you can do on the mainframe right now. So in the end, this will become the monitoring tool, web-based monitoring tool for Adabas as we move forward. So I'll go through the roadmap. We're already at version 9.1 that was released in October of 2022. On the mainframe side, we can now look at commands, users, hold queues, statistics, and parameters. So you can view these. You will see that in the demo. It does handle the Adabas encryption on Linux, and it allows you to create a new encrypted database through the manager itself. There are a couple of new settings for SSL certificates, and then there is a consolidated view of connected, non-connected Adabas in the LUW arena. If we look at what we're hoping to see in the 9.2, which is the October 2023 release, there are more features like AOS. As you know, this is a roadmap. It's never guaranteed, but what you'll be able to do is UQs, UQ, CQ, HQ, selection criteria, and filtering. You'll be able to see nucleus file status, plog status, IOs per Volser, work status, and then display the PPT. There's also going to be an ability to manage some of these things within the manager. So you'll be able to force a CLog and a plog switch. You have the ability to lock and unlock Adabas files, and then you can also kick out those naughty users that you just feel like being mean to. You may just terminate them. And I think that's really all that I got that will be in the 2023. We'll see more as we get closer. But right now, we're going to do a demo. I don't know if Helen just wants to say a few words before we do the demo, or do you just want me to play the demo?
Well, it is a pre-recorded demo because what I have to show is across 3 different platforms.
Right.
And it was too nerve-wracking to do it live. So
yeah, too many connections over too many pieces of software. So
pre-recorded.
Specific questions, we can set up follow-up sessions for that. But Helen and Patrick, thank you very much. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dave Gehring and Bob Jeffcott, and they're going to talk about accessing SQL Server from Natural. So take it away, guys.
Thanks, appreciate it. And Dave, if you want to go ahead and share and let you drive the presentation. Work.
All right, let me see if I can get that rolled up.
Yeah, today what we're going to be talking about is, while Adabase, we always think that's the best database in the world. There are always requirements to access data that resides somewhere else in your enterprise. And we want to be able to ensure that you can leverage your natural skill sets while still accessing, not only SQL Server really, but truly any other RDBMS. So it's Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, those kinds of things. And Dave, if you want to just switch to the second one, and I'll just talk a little bit about the architectures and what's required to the next slide. So really, there are additional components that are required. Many of you guys own components of those today. We're going to talk about 2 different flavors. Dave's going to talk really about the mainframe natural accessing and RDBMS, a client site that he's working at. That requires broker. Many of you guys are using NtireX broker today to call out from natural to web services, to SOAP services, to .NET objects. And what this does is that utilizing our web methods integration server with an NtireX adapter, we can then use the integration server's JDBC adapter to access that RDBMS. In this case, it's going to be SQL Server. So Dave's going to go through that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about on the open system side, you can actually use that exact same configuration that Dave's going to talk about, but we also have the component entire access, which allows on the open systems you to connect to and talk to any RDBMS. So with that, Dave, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks, Bob. Having a little challenge with the slides, but we'll get through it. Little trivia for everyone, just to start our session off. Bob and I share the same birthday, literally to the day and year. So I know he looks a lot younger than me, but yeah. All right, let's see if I can walk through this. The first thing we want to do is present essentially the overview of the steps. We'll illustrate those in this slide and then follow through with each of the individual components. The first step being creating the web method services, in which you actually set up and define the call to the adapter and target SQL database, and doing that inside the designer, specifically the integration server perspective. Then subsequent to that, step 2, if you will, is generating the IDL for that service and demonstrating that you would then be able to use the IDL tester to validate that that function works. That's done in the NtireX perspective. The third step in the process being actual generation of the client code, where you have a service defined, you've created the IDL. Now utilizing that IDL, you're going to create client components, in this example for Natural. Once those client components are generated, then the last and fourth step on, in our case, the ZOS side for the sake of discussion, is the incorporation of that into your application code. So you can take the samples that get generated and validate and verify that the function is working. And then using those samples, you can incorporate those into existing application code to accomplish the call to SQL Server. So the first step in the process, and you'll note, let's see, I have a fancy pointer here, I believe. You'll note up here in this section of the slide, we have the one designated. So that'll kind of follow along with what we just walked through at a high level. So in step one, we are in the designer, or I'm sorry, we're in the administration view of the integration server. And for those of you that have integration server, you know that you can access this either through Command Central or directly to the integration server admin interface or through designer. So you have several ways to get there, but you're going to use the administration view in integration server to incorporate and define a JDBC adapter definition for the target SQL server. And it is in this page that you would define all of the attributes for the target SQL environment you're hitting. So your server definitions, your port numbers that are used, the particular instance or database that you're connecting to, and any credentials that would be used to access that database. One of the other things here that Bob always reminds me of is when you define this, you are essentially creating a package component. So you want to incorporate that into one of your own packages. I think in this example, we're using the default, but you would incorporate that or define that when you create this connection. So the first step is creating that database connection. Once the connection is created in the integration server for the SQL Server environment, then we would move into the designer, and using the service development view would create an actual service utilizing that RDBMS connection. It is a wizard-based tool that allows you to walk through the creation of the service in the designer. When using that, we would incorporate, or I'm sorry, would define the actual service via the package that we're allocating that for, and then associate a name to that. And I apologize, I'm having trouble seeing the slide in this format. Okay, so the first step is identifying which connection you want to talk to. So that again links back to the JDBC connection that we defined in the integration server at first step. So once defining the connection, you would subsequently define what you want to use to access that connection. The wizard provides you a number of templates that you can incorporate in order to define, or I'm sorry, in order to access that that target DBMS. They give you update SQL, select SQL, you have stored procedure templates. Any of those are available to you to use to establish kind of the starting point for your connection. In our case today, we're basically going to use the select SQL example. Once that's chosen, then you are essentially drilling into the database connection based upon the information you provided when defined. It has made the connection to SQL Server in this case and is providing you the different databases that you can connect to through that connection. Once the table and information is collected from the wizard, you are driven into a selection of columns. Here you're essentially building your query where you've identified the table. Now you're selecting your columns so you can narrow down just certain data elements to be brought back, or you can bring back essentially similar to a select asterisk. You can bring back all the columns if you choose to, but you're going to walk through and build each of these phases. And you'll note at the bottom of the image that's incorporated, you have the columns first, and then we'll work in our way into the selection criteria as we walk through. So in the where criteria, we're defining what we're going to use to narrow down the data we're returning. In this case, I believe, if my eyes are correct, customer ID is being selected, and analogous to your descriptor chosen if you were dealing with a database file. Here you're using a column to select the data down based upon criteria you provide when you access this service.
Yeah, and Dave, just in that example, while we were just picking a single field, much like with a descriptor, you have the ability to pick multiple keys, so it could be used as a super descriptor too. So again, very analogous to what you do in natural.
Yeah, good point, Bob. And also in there, you have the ability to alter your criteria selection methodology, right? I mean, you can incorporate those together and ignore them in different fashions. So the results after having selected the database in the table that you're accessing, followed by a selection of the columns you want to use to narrow down or filter your data, you end up with a service that is a callable service defined based upon your input into that criteria. Using this service, you can then use the designer to run as a service, and it will essentially allow you to make that call, put in values, and get results back to validate that everything's working properly for you. Okay, now the next step, once we've defined the service, have picked our table, columns, any criteria we want to utilize, now we need to start making our first steps towards enabling that in the natural environment. So for any of you that work with remote procedure calls and things of that nature, it usually boils down to an IDL of one flavor or another. So the IDL, or if I'm not mistaken, the interface definition language, the IDL is where you're going to draw the mapping between that service and what Natural is going to expect to utilize to talk to that service. So we've moved, and it's worth noting here, and I'll point it out quickly with my fancy laser pointer. We're moved into step 2, and you'll notice in step 2, we're no longer in the service designer portion. We are in the entire X perspective. So utilizing the entire X perspective, we're now going to have created a project, and in that project, we're going to select with the context member a new option, and then the IDL extractor for web method IS. So that is how we're going to get driven into another dialog wizard that will walk us through creation of that environment. As we move in there, the first thing we're going to do is identify the package that we're going to work with. And this, again, relates back to when we define that connection and ultimately the service. We place that in a package and integration server, and that service was defined within that package. So we're selecting that here in the wizard, and we're going to also note here that when we generate this IDL, in this particular example, we're generating it towards a natural client. If we drop that menu down, we would actually see other options such as COBOL or PL1 or other. So it gives you some flexibility with respect to your ultimate client that's going to talk to this service. Once you select this information, the next thing it's going to ask you is, okay, in this service, what are we actually going to call? So we would pick the SQL demo that was created underneath the package in the service designer. Once that's selected, we define some information for the RPC environment for integration server and how that is going to be used to correlate or communicate with that service through the calls that are made from the client. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but these are essentially based on an RPC callmat structure. So typically you would see that service defined with RPC / and then something unique to your service, and then / callmat for the latter token.
Right. So basically, those of you that are familiar with a natural RPC server, you're actually just creating that same concept only on the integration server side. So it knows which of the services to call when it gets that request.
Gotcha. So once you complete those components or required information for those dialogues, you end up with the resulting IDL file that was created for communicating with that integration server service. And in here you can see where ordinarily if you were dealing with natural IPC, you'd see library names and natural program names. Here you're actually seeing package names and service descriptions used for library and program. So that's our correlation within the IDL that allows us to communicate. And then additionally, you have the breakdown in more of a defined data type structure for natural, the components that are passed both for the input data as well as the output data or results returned from the query that you might be calling. And Bob can talk more about this, but I believe you also have in the credentials section the ability to pass along user ID and password credentials for that connection.
Right, just like you might have an impersonation in the natural where you actually need to know in the base application who's actually doing the call, not the RPC user account. You can override the credentials the same way in SQL Server.
Right. Now, we don't have a PowerPoint slide for this, but this is the point in time when ordinarily I would go to within the designer, I'd right click on that IDL file and use the IDL tester. And it would dynamically generate a pop-up window for you and allow you to fill in all of your input parameters and make that call. So it's kind of the first step to validate, hey, I've got good IDL, and that IDL is communicating properly with my service and integration server. Now, once the IDL is created, now we're going to start working towards getting our actual client code. So again, right-clicking on the IDL that's now existing in our project. Excuse me. We're going to drop down into the natural portion and generate a client code for that. This will again bring up a dialog that will walk us through the attributes required to generate that information on the natural side. First is defining our RPC connection so that we can connect to that environment. The RPC server and library connections are used for the generated code so that we can take the samples that we'll get to in a moment for the client code and the required subprograms to be actually placed in the F user in the target environment. Now on the screen, you'll also note that there is an option where you can specify it in an existing project. So if you're using the designer and you've got a project defined and you want to place the components there, that is an option. In my experience, I've found it's easier just to specify that you want to place it directly in the F user. So you don't have to deal with anything other than going in and cataloging the objects once they're created. Once you identify that target environment, now you're going to be presented with the overview of the components that will be generated. You have a client subprogram, you have a PDA that's defined, and then you have an example program or test program that's created in order for you to validate that the functionality is working. The wizard will generate those names for you automatically. I tend to go in and there's an option for you to override so you can give them more meaningful names for you or shorter names if that's your preference. But you have the ability to control what those objects will result in terms of their names specifically. The things that are listed here in the slide for resulting objects, there's one that's kind of missing, but we'll talk about that. The main things it generates are the client subprogram, the client PDA, and the client test program. The fourth thing I'm mentioning is there is an LDA that's created, but it's not unique to this implementation, but it is generated each time you go through this. And that's the NetRPC local data area. The main ones that we are interested in are the client specific code, which is our subprogram, PDA, and test program. These components are carried over into the mainframe environment, and that's where we would start actually being able to make our first calls from that environment. So the test program that's generated will pop up a map for you in the natural environment, allowing you to fill in a lot of the attributes for the call to the broker, the specific broker and port you may need to use, and the specific service. If you want to override all that, it's all available to you in the sample program and gives you a, essentially right after you generate, you can immediately run that. The next step in utilizing that code subsequent to you validating it with the generated test program is to take portions of that and incorporate it into your application programs to make the call directly and in the context of your specific environment. So in this slide, you see the callnet to the user GROU callnet or subprogram. That's the actual callnet that would be calling the generated subprogram from the generation function that we went through in the previous step. So by doing that, you are essentially invoking that service through the callnet and then receiving the data back in the PDA that's going to be passed back to your program for the results to be returned to your natural environment on ZOS. The other point mentioned here in this slide is that you do have a call that's capable or available to you for context setting with the RPC-CNTX subprogram, and that allows you to override the default values for things like your broker attributes, and the class service that are being used when you're invoking the service on the integration server side. This can be handy if you're working in different environments and you want to test and or compare one that's in, say, a development environment to one that's in a test or acceptance environment, and be able to navigate between those two a little more readily. I think, what else? Am I missing anything, Bob?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't blow too fast, but I'll hand it to you.
Okay, thanks. And we're going to touch just for a couple minutes, Becky, because I know you're looking. If we can go to the next slide, Dave.
Yeah, and also there is one new unanswered question in the chat, but we can get to that in a minute. But go ahead, Bob.
Okay, sure. And then on the open systems, and we'll be talking, the next presentation is talking about open systems capability. While, we have a lot of people that transferred from mainframe natural to an Adabas to open systems, you also have, using the entire access component, you have the ability for natural and open systems to connect to RDBMSs. And those RDBMSs can be remote. And as you'll see in the next presentation, natural can be containerized as well as Adabas. So this fits really well in that environment. And Dave, if we can slide one more slide. Just the steps you're going to see are very, very similar. So the first thing you want to do is define your connection to that database. So you do it instead of at the IS administration page. In this particular case, you actually do it in the natural configuration file. So you set the DBMS assignments. I want this DB ID number to relate to this SQL Server or this Oracle or this MySQL, and this is the connection stream we're using. So very, very similar to what Dave just talked about. And then one more, if you could, Dave. Then you define the files to natural. So you create DDMs. Unlike Adabas, where you actually have to type them in, you can actually just import the SQL tables. So it uses that same connection and just imports the table names and the column names and the keys into natural. So you have those DDMs. Now you're ready to go ahead and code. If we could flip to one more. You can use, the nice part is you don't have to know SQL. I can use standard natural statements. I can use finds, I can use read logicals, I can use the stores, the updates, withs, and those translate into SQL statements behind the scenes. So a find all translates to a SQL, or a find number or select count, those kinds of things. So it does the translation for you. However, and if you could click, Dave, There are a few that you can't use, and I have to admit that probably most of those you guys don't use anyway in normal natural, but things like read by ISN because they don't have ISNs, find first, find unique, store using giving number. I mean, you guys probably have not used those very often, but you can't use those. And then you can also use SQL. So we get one last click here, Dave. So all the normal SQL statements. So if you have SQL that's written somewhere else, you can actually just pop that into your natural code. So if you're a good SQL programmer, you can do that. But again, it is just another way on the open systems to access SQL Server, Oracle, or any other RDBMS. And with that one last click, thank you guys very much for everything. So, you know, just a little, you can get to any data anywhere from natural.
And just to clarify, even though Bob and I showed a different technique for ZOS client in our make-believe example initially versus an open systems, the open systems can utilize that same natural client that's generated for integration server. So you have the ability to use that from either environment.
Correct. Thanks. And thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yes.
All of it.
Yeah, Dave and Bob, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think all the questions have been answered. Bob, just look at the chat, make sure we have.
Okay.
But do appreciate it, guys. And so the next presentation is going to be from our professional services group, Adabas and Natural on Linux and the cloud. Who knew? What else is there? It's going to be Julie Rowe and Douglas Kelly, and I'll take it over to you guys. And one of you should share your screen.
Yes. Ask Douglas to share. Oh.
All right, did I get the right screen?
I believe so.
Yes, I can see it, Douglas. Thank you.
All right.
Outstanding. Awesome. So thank you, Becky, and thanks, Douglas, for bringing this up. So I just want to say good afternoon to everyone from Central Ohio in April, where it can be winter, spring, and summer in the same day like today. My name is Julie Rowe. I've been with Software AG Professional Services for 28 years, focusing on Adabas Natural technologies, specializing in Linux and cloud implementations. So today, Douglas Kelly and I are going to share about the journey to Linux and cloud, and including some newer ANN features that you may consider implementing in your environments to meet enhanced security or business requirements. So let's pop over to the agenda, Douglas. Okay, so for our agenda, we'll provide an overview of the Linux and cloud journey approach. We'll dive into some technical details around Adabas and Natural features, such as the role-based access control at the Adabas level, high availability options, distributed architecture, securing Natural One, and cloud considerations around all of that. So next slide. So yes, of course, we can run Adabas and Natural on Linux and in the cloud, and we do so in many places. So moving to this environment enables you to take advantage of cloud scalability. For example, if you have high volume batch processes, for example, that only run certain times during the year, you can easily increase your capacity during those times and then reduce it after for cost savings. We have a lot of customers that have large batch processing environments, and that may be beneficial to them. You'll also benefit from a modern architecture that allows you to take advantage of microservices and containers. So we officially support Linux, Red Hat, and SUSE running on-prem in Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. We have numerous customers running in various configurations on all these platforms. We've successfully supported customers in moving to Linux and the cloud platform, including using a distributed architecture and also implementing some of the new enhanced security features. Next slide. So as you're aware, Software AG's commitment for Adabas and Natural goes to 2050 and beyond. And while we currently support a number of legacy platforms, our strategy going forward is focused on support for ZOS, Linux, and cloud. There are numerous ways to get there. We've supported customers who have chosen to go Linux on-prem as an initial step, and then moving to cloud as a second step. We've supported customers who have gone directly to cloud. We're also currently supporting a couple of customers, one that's moving from legacy VSE to ZOS, and another from Solaris to Red Hat. And both of those implementations have plans for modernization and cloud deployment in the future. So regardless of your current platform, we're able to strategize with you and support your cloud transformation. Slide. So if you're already running on Linux, you can easily lift and shift to move your chosen cloud provider, and subsequently you can go cloud native. You can also deploy Adabas and Natural applications to the cloud with container platforms such as Docker, Kubernetes. Containers are key to making your applications available via the internet. On-prem, public, private, hybrid environments. You can turn your valuable core applications and features into a cloud native app. Take advantage of the benefits of a managed Kubernetes service. Consider re-architecting your applications to use microservices and containers and container orchestration. This will set you up for future innovation. And I will add that, as we discussed earlier, entire access, open systems, something that we have there that can benefit you in reaching your SQL databases, as well as sounds like Adabas Manager does many of the SysAOS type features directly from the Adabas Manager on the Open Systems platform. And we do have that successfully running. A couple of customers even on the call today that are using that, that I'm sure would love to share their stories of how that's working for them. Go ahead to the next slide, Douglas. So we just wanted to share some reference information. These presentations will be available and sent out to you after the user group sessions, but there is a link in there to our cloud strategy, as well as a couple of links to both AWS and Azure on their partner networks, sharing information around our cloud strategy and how we are working with them to help get you there. So we'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to my go-to, the wizard of technical solutions for Adabas and Natural, our architect, Douglas Kelly. He's going to get into a little more of the technical details around some of these features, and surely he'll be able to answer some questions if you have them along the way. So turn it over to Douglas.
Hi there, I'm with Professional Services, as Julia mentioned, and have been working with the Adabas and Natural for more than 40 years. And working with Software AG as long as Julie, about 28 years. So I've done lots of work in the last little while getting onto Adabas running on the cloud and Linux. Kind of some of the things we'll talk about, a little bit about what's new, some of the rehosting topics that our customers have encountered, and a little bit of some of the new features. This is just a quick recap. I think we've seen some of this already in some of the other presentations, some of the product innovations recently introduced. So an Adabas cluster for Linux, we now have high availability for Adabas using multi-node cluster technology. So enabling multiple nodes running Adabas, providing active passive failover for greater availability. Adabas encryption is used to secure your Adabas data in flight over TCP and at rest in the containers on the data stores. Latest version has added encryption for both the plog and backup files. And in case you haven't run into it yet, it also encrypts the data and associated containers and the on the disk. And as we saw, Adabas Manager, latest version available, supports encryption, so it allows you to set the encrypted state for Linux databases. So our cluster, Adabas cluster on Linux and the cloud, allows higher availability, reducing our single point of failure. It's a multi-node concept where Adabas, the primary, runs on one node, And cluster replication is used to keep the replicas in sync. So if the primary should be unavailable or fail for any reason, then the secondary become one of the secondaries will become the primary and take over processing database requests. So it's designed for virtual machines, container, and cloud infrastructures. And the cluster handles all of the replication data second nodes implicitly. So add-on product, Adabas encryption for Linux, enables our database communication to be encrypted over TCP. So using standard SSL technology for connecting with our databases. Deployed in the cloud, the Adabas encryption supports both AWS and Azure key stores. Google Cloud key store will be added in a future release. So it provides value over the hardware-based encryption that's already there. The hardware-based encryption is transparent to all of the users on the VM instance. So if somebody manages to clone or otherwise steal a disk from your cloud vendor or on-prem disk storage, the hardware level encryption ensures that that's not readable by anybody outside of it. But once you actually get into the application or into the environment, then that is transparent to you. So the hardware-based encryption, while it's encrypted the hardware, it's relatively easy to get at that data once you are on the platform. So it's actually quite transparent. You hardly notice that it's there when you're actually using the hardware level encryption. So that can be an advantage if that's all you need, but most people want to ensure that the encryption is applied to the actual data so that even users coming into the system have to be authorized and to access that data and to enable the decryption of that data. So worked in conjunction with Adabas RBAC, which we'll talk about in a moment. We then provide both the authorization for that decryption at the database, and even the DBAs have to be authorized for the use of that utility against that database. So Adabas encryption, so it does securing of the data in flight. We still call this SSL, but underneath the covers, of course, you're familiar with this, then you know that it's the transport layer security has actually replaced SSL, but lots of the terminology still refers to SSL. So it encrypts the sensitive data at rest, securing your data container, associator container, and as I mentioned, the plog, as well as work, sort, and temp. Software-based encryption solution and supports AES encryption. So out-of-the-box solution for ensuring data protection without having to change the data application or putting Adabas operations at risk. And one thing I always like is you no longer have to put a cipher key into every single program and ending up with that cipher key pasted on everybody's terminal because it's a long bunch of digits that you have to memorize. Adabas RBAC then provides the other side of security, and this gives us Linux applications control over authorizations and authentication, comparable to what you see in other Linux type databases, RDBMSs, and provides a viable security mechanism for customers migrating their applications from mainframe security, such as RACF or ACF2. So it provides quite a number of the similar functionality. If you've been using Adabas SAF on the mainframe, then this gives you pretty much a like for like options. So it uses standard-based control model that secures the access to the database files and to the utility operations. Users are identified to RBAC and assigned to roles. The roles are then granted permissions to perform specific operations on specific files. One of the features that was incorporated into the version 7 was to add a natural trust option. So Adabas Natural then passes a username to Adabas RBAC in one of the different modes, depending on where we're coming from. So we're using terminal emulation, AppLinks Web, or we're doing natural development through Natural One and NDV, batch terminal emulation scripts, or RPC server through EntireX request. So the username can be obtained from any of those, and TCPS then is supported via AdaLink. So it uses the DB mapping.txt to describe the connections and provide the SSL parameters to make the connection. So then Adabas is able to trust the Natural server in the event that Natural server is presenting a valid SSL client certificate. So this is a two-way SSL. Adabas itself can be the SSL server, and then the client, the Natural application, presents a certificate, a client certificate, when making the connection to Adabas. And that ensures not only that the communication is encrypted, but the user, the security that is presented by Natural will be trusted by Adabas, and Adabas then skips the actual authentication process that it previously used and trusts that the user ID given by Natural will be the actual user that it authenticates against RBAC. So it then applies the authorization rules based on that provided user ID. If the client certificate is not provided or is not valid, then the client, whether it's Natural or any of the other tools that access Adabas, can then present their actual credentials for the configured security on typically the OS or LDAP to authenticate the user. So in this case, just to back up a little bit, typically the users are going to log into Natural Security and authenticate against the LDAP for the enterprise, and then Adabas then trusts that Natural has authenticated this user ID and provides the authorization. So that ensures that we have an LDAP level security across this. So some of the implementation details. So Adabas and Natural are on separate servers, and we must have AdaTCP enabled with the entire network license. To use the SSL enabled communication requires the Adabas encryption license, the AEL license. And then we need to configure SSL client certificates for the Natural server. And in the Adabas nucleus itself, we have to set the parameters SSL trust and SSL verify. If SSL verify is set to, as the documentation examples have, to 0, then your SSL trust actually doesn't work. So you must use an SSL verify level greater than one or greater, which essentially is the number of the depth of the chain that it needs to go through on your certificates. With Adabas RBAC, our diagram shows that we have users are assigned to roles and permissions are assigned to the roles. So when we use migrating from RACF, we have many permissions that are granted to individual users. And to do that in RBAC, you need to simply create a role for the user and assign the user to that role. So you may be able to rationalize your roles and permissions, but for the immediate migration from your existing SAP facility to RBAC, you may just use this workaround. One of the things that kind of surprised me when I started activating RBAC for the first time was that the initialization of RBAC requires that the containers for RBAC data files be on the specific associator and data block sizes. And almost everybody was using bigger block sizes than what this RBAC was doing. So when you do the initialization of the RBAC file, database automatically creates new extents to hold these smaller blocks, data blocks, SO and data blocks. So make sure that your environment variable is set correctly before you start the AdaDBS session that configures RBAC. And just to reiterate, you can authenticate your user IDs against the local operating system, LDAP, Active Directory, or an internal repository, a text file. Database user exit 21 can be used to customize the credentials being passed to database if needed. So in the cases where a client does not have a valid client certificate, and scripts can be used to convert RACF reports to input to database RBAC utility Ada RBA. And what's new in the cloud for Natural? So we're going to take a little bit of a look at what's new. Natural security. We'll talk a little bit more about the Natural LDAP authentication. Some customers have had questions around using how to secure Natural One a little more, and we'll talk some about high availability. So on the Linux and cloud, database and Natural. So Natural, we have in Natural 921, multi-fetch statement on the statement level. So this was, you could code it, but it didn't actually work. So now there's actual support for multi-fetch. New database support via EntireX for Postgres and MySQL. Dynamic level, trace level for Natural RPC server. So that's something that I've been looking forward to using. Not being able to change that security level without having to interrupt the server operations. And we'll talk a little bit more about Natural security, long names, passwords shortly. And then other features for Natural One, a little bit more syntax coloring, construct enhancements to Natural construct user exit model, and improved access, mainframe access performance. So you can activate the hyper descriptor exit to improve access to object lists. So as you may have come across already, when you go access libraries that have 10,000 objects in it, the performance can be a bit slow. So these hyper descriptors help improve that access. And then additional improvements in bringing Natural for Ajax up, keeping up with some of the new technologies being available.
Hey,
All right,
Douglas,
so Natural security on Linux.
Douglas, this is Becky. Can I interrupt for a second? I don't know how many more slides you have, but can I get you to do kind of like a high level of the whatever existing slides you have left? We're getting way out of scope here. I appreciate it.
Okay.
We're running tight on time.
I will try to skip down then.
All right.
All right,
But make sure you cover the highlights or the important stuff. The
All right.
really important stuff. Thank you.
So natural security with LDAP has been available on Linux for some time, but it was limited to using 8-character user IDs and short passwords. So now we have support for long usernames and passwords, and there's APIs to help support that. Here in Natural 1, so if we have, typically we just stand up a natural development server, and all of the developers go through that and access resources. But in some cases where they want to tie who's using what resources, even when they're coming through NDV, both for database and for operating system resources, then one option is actually to stand up multiple NDV servers, even to having each developer assigned to their own NDV server, or perhaps to a developer team. So in Linux, then the NDV process is started under that developer's user ID. And once that's done, any access coming from NDV are authenticated in the context of that developer's user ID. And the logon user exit and natural security can be used to validate that the NDV server is only being accessed by that user. All right, high availability. So this is where we stand up multiple instances of our natural online services, and they're accessed from Linux, and the end users are coming in from a browser. The requests are routed via the load balancer using sticky sessions to a particular app-link server that then communicates with our natural online. So this eliminates single points of failure on our natural side. So we have multiple VMs running natural online, reliable crossover if there's any issues and failures, then the load balancer detects it and reroutes the request accordingly. So it provides high availability and scalability. So when we have natural services, we have natural RPC servers, providing services to many consumer applications. Consumer applications come in again to a load balancer. Because these are usually stateless, we would do not need sticky services, and we can stand up then multiple VMs servicing those services. Again, eliminating single point of failure, providing reliable crossover, multiple hardware, software load balancers, switching the client request, doing the load balancing, allowing the scalability as we increase the number of servers available to handle the loads, and detecting a failure. So this gives you an example of a distributed architecture that can be applied to Adabas and Natural. We can containerize these. We can use different VMs. So we have an environment where we have a virtual machine for our app links and Natural Online and our entire services, communicating with our database, and having the Ada link is managing the connections, whether we're hitting our primary or one of the failover servers in our active passive environment. As we scale things, we increase the number of servers. Here we show 2, but it can be as many as we need in our VMs for the different environments. And they don't have to be stood up in parallel. There could be 3 natural onlines and 1 entire X VM, or vice versa. All right, and now we just want to see our the slides that we've taken here are coming from our trip to Palm Beach, Florida.
Julie, is that an alligator?
Down to the water and start drinking from it as if you were a deer.
I don't think that alligator can eat you, Julie, alive, so.
All right. contact information. Myself and Julie are listed here, and so feel free to reach us if you have any additional questions. I don't know if we have time for any other questions now.
I think they've all been answered in the chat, and we are out of time. So Douglas, thank you very much, because as Douglas said, he's got 40 plus years using Adabas and Natural. He's our go-to guy internally. You know, we have questions. We're like, oh, Douglas will know. So we asked Douglas. And Julie, thank you as always. And so the next session is Patrick, last but not least, and he's going to do a shortened version of Natural 9.1 and 9.2. So hang on with me if you can, because I've asked Patrick to cut that down to 10 minutes or less. We can always do more webinars if you guys want, you know, like shorter ones, you know, like maybe 30 minutes on a particular topic. And thank you, Sam, for the Sam Longoria, for the comment about Julie and Douglas are a great team to work with. We totally agree. So anyway, if you guys want to hear more on any one of these topics, let us know. We can arrange that, just a 101. We can do a wider webinar for everybody, whatever you guys want. Patrick, take it away. And don't forget to hang on, because right after this, I'm going to give away 3 more gift cards.
Okay, me again. Quickly going to do Natural 9.1, as it's been around since 2018. And just going to highlight the features. So this was the first version of Natural without the green screen editor. So you will end up seeing some stuff that are relevant to not just the green screen editor, but more on the Natural 1 side for the developer. So this is more of a presentation to tell you that if you really ever need anything, please go to documentation.softwareag.com. And as you know, all the release notes are always there. It will cover everything about supported, what's new, what's changed, what's dropped. And I'm not going to go into all the details. This is to encourage you to go to the documentation and read up on these new features that are available. Just a high level, on the Natural 1, we introduced a new version of, not Natural 1, of Natural 9.1.2. We introduced a new version of Optimizer Compiler, which upped the support of architecture up to 12, so you're just going to get more and more performance improvements. So please, I'm going to fly through these slides, and please get hold of me on anything that will be sent out to you. There's a lot of slides. If there's anything more that you would like to see, please let me know, and we'll just get to me through email. Quick little thing with Natural 1, of course, we lose the some of the green screen capabilities, but there is a mainframe console, so you can still go and type certain things in the console. They also introduced this GUI, Natural Tools and Utilities, so you can see there's a whole lot of stuff that you can actually do straight from a GUI menu, which in the back end launches the browser UI, the 3270 emulator screen, and does all of these things like list, DBRM, etc., globals, etc. Also introduced the 9.1 was the Natural Profiler, a nice GUI for being able to look for performance enhancements to your Natural code. As I said, this is the list DIR. People were worried they were going to miss that. Of course, you can just go to the Natural console and you can do a list ** within the Natural 1 environment. Highlights, just the role server support for vSAM. There's some new authorized service managers, and the Natural main menu changes to create and edit, because those were the 2 functions that we lost in the green screen. 9.2.1 introduced a whole lot of improvements, and right up at the top, we were used to seeing a Natural 8.2, which had about 20 additional products. We introduced Natural for DB2 8.3, and then later on we did Natural DB2 8.4. What's happened with Natural 9.2 is everything is now at 9.2. So if you call in any request at the 9.2 level, your version of DB2, NOC, all of those will be at the 9.2 level. These are all the products that are at the 9.2.1 level when you get to 9.2.1, so please take note of that. At an operating level, it's what versions of the operating system, the TP monitor, the database support that is for Natural 9.2. The installation is almost the same. One of the big changes is the Natural RPC server with impersonation no longer requires APF authorization. And then there are also some change to the Natural review file. I'm not going to go into any details because we don't have time for that. Drop functionality, you can read that in the manual, in the documentation. So please just read these and then go to the actual release notes and follow up on that on anything that you want. So on the high level, support for DB2 functionality, vSAM datasets, compress. Let's move on because I actually have examples of those. So here's some couple of changes that were made because probably from change enhancements. So we now have a move by name, improved error message on the move by name. So please look at these in the on the manual. This is a pretty cool one, I think, the ability to have a variable used as a work file number. I don't know, many people must have asked for that, but I can remember if I had that in my old programming days, I would have loved to be able to have a variable work file number. You can do a compress with edit mask, support and logical fields. There's a new variable timestamp, which is now more accurate. So that is now available to you because a lot of people use the natural timestamp for keeping uniqueness when they store records. There's also a new compiler option, V82 comp, that will allow you to do work with previous versions as well. I think this is quite a big one, the support of a 64-bit memory cache for the buffer pool. So you'll see when the buffer pool comes up, you'll see that under certain circumstances, if you have that in, you'll see the new features or the things inside the actual cache attached, etc., with the sys BPM. I'm going to go this because Douglas already went through these. This is the natural ASM before and after. And there's also a dynamic trace. There's a couple of screens after this, Becky, but we don't have to go through those. People can read these in the manual. So there is ability to do dynamic RPC server trace now. And I think that just about covers all my slides.
And Patrick, the longer password or passphrase, that's for both natural in the mainframe and natural off the mainframe, correct?
Yes.
Which is something that I know a lot of you guys have been asking for a long time because, 8-byte passwords or 8-character passwords just don't cut it anymore. And remember, all these slides will be coming to you in a couple of days. Look for an email. If you don't get it sometime by the middle of next week, Nicole, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you don't get it sometime next week, reach out to us or check your junk spam folder. Maybe it accidentally gets rolled into there. But with that, I would like to say thank you guys for sticking with us. We did take a little longer than we had anticipated,